I told you this guy's a genius.
Self-proclaimed, maybe.
Well, as long as it works for him.
Exactly my point.
Awesome.
Super exhausting life questions, all this weird shit going on. Still trying to figure out. I actually thought I wouldn't leave the house for a while. I mean, like a long while. And then suddenly you're on the move again, doing stuff and realizing nothing makes fucking sense ever. And that's just the hardest truth, but also the most easy one. Because if you ain't got nothing to cling to, then it's fairly easy to convince yourself to simply stay in flow. And what that means is flow. Okay, you know, I'm getting past my emotional shortcomings or physical, sexual shortcomings, and I'm trying to focus again. And now please remember how much I've already talked on here. And although you may not realize how much the topic of, you know, women and sexuality is weighing on me, and just being in love and missing someone or whatever, you know, I've realized it. And maybe, you know, I mean, there were times where I just talked about nothing else. And the way I feel now is I'm still producing, which makes no sense if you think about it. But that's what flow is, right? It doesn't make sense. You know, I'm really afraid somebody's gonna come and just break my camera because it looks so ridiculous and it's quite vulnerable. That's what I realize now. You know, I'm quite vulnerable. I'm in a vulnerable place. I've got this camera, I've got a laptop. When they break, how am I to replace them? At the moment, I cannot. And if your laptop suddenly breaks, right, that's always an option, because technology is somewhat, you know, not like foolproof, you know, it's not 100% reliable, and neither is your body, neither are you. I mean, you maybe, you know, yesterday, you know, I just keep in flow, you know, I just talk about whatever comes to my mind, And like I've said already, the only true thing you can ever say is actually something about how you feel. Everything else is just a projection and bullshit. Yeah, I'm just staying out of the way from people. But at the same time, you know, it's actually kind of stupid. Because not everybody is like a death threat, right? And most people, they actually don't do shit. Especially not during the day. But focus on yourself. And then simply trust that people don't really bother you, because everybody's afraid to die these days. You know, everybody's a pussy. And you just have to, you know, show them that. You know, if somebody wants to confront you or attack you, and they're like angry or they want to show you something, all you gotta do is just give them a look that says, you know, yeah man, I've already died. What are you going to do to me? Because you're afraid. And I've already been there. You know, I know how you feel. So I'm just gonna ignore you. And you're gonna hate that even more. And because you can't really do much when people are angry, when people are afraid, when people are concerned for themselves, then what can you do? Well, you can just acknowledge it, that this kind of world is pretty weird, but you can't take it away from them. I mean, I've met people that were clinging hard to their suffering, and it's actually also good that they do so, because if I take your suffering away, or yeah, I'm not quite sure. You know, I always wanted to get rid of these things, not the suffering itself, but my idea that I carry around towards suffering. You know, it's bad. You know, if I feel like this, it's bad. You know, if I have emotions, you know, I love a woman and she's somewhere else and we miss each other over a great distance, but you know, we struggle, we fight. You know, some people say, oh, it's so bad, you know, my heart is breaking. You know, yeah, sure, it feels like that. Your heart is being ripped out. I also don't want to talk always. I do not want to always record myself. I actually wanted to hide behind the camera, but I keep maintaining this perspective that, you know, if I don't do it now, I have to do it later. And that's the same with Oh, rot! Entschuldigung. You know, you just have to figure it out for yourself. And now, you know, it's like people are so pissed. You know, if the, you know, they're like, you know, why don't you, yeah, sorry man, I'm focused on other things. And now it's starting to rain. I actually was concerned about this, but I think it's gonna be all right. You know, I just continue walking. And if I meet people and they're kind of annoyed, you know, I'm annoyed myself. If you create content online, I always have to say that if you want to be conscious about what's going on, and if you have days where you feel really bad, what you have to realize is that you're going to channel a lot of hatred. You know, you're also going to channel a lot of bliss. I mean, when you're deeply connected with people, like, you know, you talk about fear and you lead a life that is not the norm, where you can, you know, it looks like you can just do whatever you want and you're super happy all the time. But what most people don't talk about is how much effort it takes to turn on the camera and to put on a smile. Okay, for me it's relatively easy. It's easier to do this than to work for someone else. And I've been talking about that, and it's a valid point, and it keeps being a valid point. Just thinking about yeah, I just, every time there's a junction, I retreat within and I ask myself, where do I want to go now? And then I get an answer, you know, go left, go right, go whatever. And then, you know, sometimes I get to this point where I actually want to return and go back. But hey, there's a lot of wasps. You know, we're heading towards autumn. It's getting cooler now, thank God, because I couldn't stand the heat anymore, which I suppose makes me probably more German than African, but I can cope with anything. But if it would always be hot, I would get used to it, you know. That's also a valid point. You know, I would get used to it. You can get used to anything if you're open to getting used to it. And most people are not open to get used to it. You know, they just want to complain. They just want to be stuck on, oh, it's warm. And then they can go around and they can say, oh, it's so warm. You know, it's like what I said. Yeah, you know, it's not just me saying that. I mean, it's just, you know, everything is saying it. Not just people. I mean, just the thing itself is saying it. I mean, you don't have to say that you feel bad. You know, if I'm an observant human, you know, I can just take one look at you and I can realize, oh wow, you look pretty terrible. And, you know, if you're worried too much about customers coming or money flowing in, then it's hard to focus on, you know, creating a good show. Which is why I create content, and I realize that when energy is flowing, it isn't just flowing, you know. Just understand, if somebody like me produces content on the internet and you consider the fact that we are all connected, and when I'm in flow, you know, other people may get sucked into my flow, which maybe they would, let's say, listen to what I say, and then they would try to imitate me. And every time they try that and they fail, they would hate me. You know, they would say, what a douche, right? They would say, you know, or they would look at what I'm saying and they would, who are you to speak here, you know? What an idiot, you know? Which is why I go to such great length to produce so much content, because people's hearts are closed because they're afraid. And it's annoying, because if we are stuck in fear, we cannot progress and transcend ourselves, which is important for nature to heal, which is also, of course, our own nature. And that's why, you know, I'm getting to the point, if you create content and somebody watches one of your videos and he's angry, and he sits there and he says, what an asshole, right? Because now he's projecting his anger onto you. And you may sit at home and you may feel like, you know, you start hating your own content. You know, yesterday you loved it, but suddenly 2 weeks later you just hate it. And you think, why, you know, where's all this hatred coming from? You know, I thought I loved what I was doing. And now I'm actually explaining it to myself, which is great. But I'm also explaining it to you. So I'm basically, if I open my mouth, I start talking about it, which I always want to stop doing, because people tell me, you know, I shouldn't talk so much. But the truth is, well, who's going to explain it to me? Because you can't do it, and you can't do it, you know, and unless you've already lived it, you know, nobody can do it. I have to explain this to myself, and I like doing so. And it also helps me to keep people away from me, because I don't want to be managed. I don't want to be somebody's pet, you know, that comes around and says, you have to do this now, you know, because I'm already doing that, or whatever the voice is. You know, something is already telling me what to do. So I cannot rely on other people to tell me what to do. So if I sit at Rome and I feel I hate my content at the moment, you know, sometimes I just want to delete my entire channel, you know, sometimes I feel like this. And then I think, wait a second, you know, just keep it, you know, for whatever reason, just keep it, because you never know, you know. And the most efficient thought that I have maintained, and that's the truth, right? If I have thoughts such as, you know, just delete it all, then I think of, okay, wait a second, don't judge it. You don't only, you know, you don't really create this for yourself. Well, I do, because I like it, and because if I create like the video called I see, you know, I like the I, and then see, I think it's an artistic freedom. I really love that, you know, and I have no idea how it came about. Well, I do, you know, I have experience and I have a curious mind. So I just start putting clips into Kdenlive, and then I had this GIF image of the eye, which I produced in GIMP, that closes. But the problem was now that if you layer different clips over each other and then you apply filters and stuff onto it, effects and mods and stuff, then let's say you take the vertigo effect and you apply it on a GIF, but the GIF is only, you know, one sequence of the eye shuts, the eye opens. That means that if you now apply an effect on it, the effect is always going to restart. Because if I want to have a 3-minute video, but one sequence of the eye closing and opening, let's say, is only 10 seconds, then I will have to repeat 12 times. If I want to have a 2-minute video with the eye closing and opening all the time, I would have to repeat the GIF 12 times, and each time when each sequence ends, the effect vertigo, which creates this kind of like wobbly zoom kind of thing, is going to also restart, which means that you always have a cut in the eye opening closing in terms of color. And that's really annoying if you're an artist and you want to be kind of professional, or you just want it to look like, you know, like it flows into each other. Yeah, so I had to first just do the eye, you know, let's say repeat it 30-40 times, then only render this, and then make a new video where I have now, you know, 3 minutes or 4 minutes of just the eye that continuously opens and closes every 9 or 10 seconds. And then I can use that to make a 2-minute video, because now I don't have, you know, I just have one video, I apply the effect on it, and that's gonna run through the entire thing without restarting all the time, you know? You know, that may not make sense, but it's just this, you know, it's not just, hey, I wanna make a video. You know, people think AI is gonna be super easy and it's gonna revolutionize. No, it's not gonna do shit. Because there's gonna be people that's gonna use AI, and then there's gonna be people that don't use it, just like me, you know. I like sitting there because for me that's meditation. And if I feel anger, that's exactly my practice to learn to just feel the anger. You know, the anger is there. It's just energy that's building up, you know. And maybe 100 people are watching my content and it's just so much hatred. But if I manage to transcend the hatred, you know, then I can bring all these people into love. Which is what, you know, sometimes you hear stories about, let's call them spiritual leaders. You know, let's call them gurus, let's call them energy channelers, let's call them transformers, because they transform energy. They have a following of, let's say, 1 million people. That's 1 million people you keep close to your heart. You know, you don't have all of them there all the time, but it means that every time you feel hatred, you say, okay, you don't say, you know, my hatred, you know, or I hate. No, you do not identify with the hatred. You simply acknowledge the fact that there's hate, And then you have to go back to your method and transcend it. Now, my method of transcendence is basically action. You know, I'm an avatar of action, and an avatar is a somewhat like pure being that was brought into the world, and that's job it is to learn how to communicate with other people what they don't understand. Because if you look at society, I mean, there's no doubt about it that society has no idea what's going on spiritually, right? Everybody's just running around being complete idiots about nature, their own nature, and everybody's just being manipulated through the usage of, you know, methods that you can basically label as hypnosis. You know, people are being hypnotized into following, let's say, how do you call that? Let's say Amazon. You know, Amazon in itself is very bad for the environment. Not just for the environment in terms of, you know, we produce a lot of waste material. You know, we sell stuff, we have to ship it around the world. It's all this globalization bullshit. But also the stories you hear about how they treat their employees. So Amazon is probably a good example for a bad example. But the way they, you know, brainwash people into just whitewashing everything they do. So, you know, they say, you know, when a customer calls us, the service is great. But the service to humanity itself is shit. Because all that Amazon does is just lumping trash onto us. Because, I mean, truth be told, nobody needs a camera like this. No, I did not buy from Amazon. It doesn't make it much better. I refuse Amazon. And you can always find everything you want somewhere else. You know, I try to support smaller shops, but even there you cannot be sure, you know, whether these are partners from Amazon. But I'm sure you can find it out somehow. But okay, at some point the trail is just being washed out, and you have to figure out how to do it for yourself. You know, if you like Amazon and you say, hey, they're doing a great service, and if I order something, I want to know that they're going to take it back. You know how I do it? I make sure first that what I order is what I want by simply thinking about it for weeks and sometimes even months, and then only ordering it once I'm sure that it's what I want. And once I've done that, you know, then I order it. You know, once I'm sure, absolutely sure, you know. Before I ordered this action cam, I was looking at models, I was comparing prices, I was reading up, you know, which one to take. So I chose the, you know, not the newest model, but the second, the previous one. And once I felt good about the choice that I was about to make, you know, and I said, okay, I'm gonna pick this one. Then I just had to wait for the money, and once I had it, I ordered it. And then when I started using it, you know, it was kind of weird. But then you get used to it because it's like, you know, it's like another arm. And all I can say about this is it was a great job. And so in my laptop, I've had it now for, let's say, 2 years. You know, it's been basically running non-stop. I paid 777 euros, I think. You know, it was like, that's a sign, you know, it's gotta be this one, because the numbers add up. It doesn't always work like this, but for me it was just, you know, okay, that's what I want. Just a second. Yeah, now I have to think about what to talk about. So in terms of spirituality, you can actually live your life as a kind of spiritual James Bond. You turn into some kind of secret agent, and you can literally look at, hey, I have to do something quick.